from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, where you would never think that we would have been waiting for the cool change. That's more of an Australian thing, but gosh, we needed it. Searing heat, homes just not built for it, air conditioning just not the norm in the UK, and temperatures hitting 40 degrees, unheard of. So yeah, cricket-wise, players sweltering, spectators sweltering, commentators sweltering when there's no air conditioning. I also managed to get a little day trip across, though, away from the cricket to the Isle of Wight. I can thoroughly recommend that. Got the foot ferry across, hired bikes, explored the island, found a little beach. Very pleasant way to see out some of the heat. We'll talk about the Commonwealth Games in this show, but at the moment as well, the UK and England is very much wrapped up in the women's Euros because the England's women's team are doing very well on that front.
Jim Maxwell in Sydney. Yes, a few of my friends keep telling me to watch the Euros. What's the Euros? Anyway,
what's soccer?
It's soccer. Yes, exactly. Well, it's probably better weather for soccer than cricket here. The great wet low continues in Sydney. If it's not raining, it's windy, or it's both. And there are still many golf courses that have been closed for months that have got no chance of opening for a while. So not a good place to be playing cricket, but not a bad spot to be watching it on the telly, particularly the finish to that Pakistan-Sri Lanka game yesterday. Wow, what a performance by Pakistan to chase. This is what everyone's doing in cricket. It's so commonplace now. Leave a team 350 to get, and I'll knock them off in the fourth innings.
Well, looks like baseball's really taken off. Hello, this is Charu Sharma from Bangalore for All India Radio. I had many things to say, but Alison, you mentioned Cool Change, and my mind went back to one of my favorite songs by Little River Band, Cool Change, and I was sort of humming it. But anyway, we got to move on. Bangalore's full of rain once again, but we still get quite a bit in. There's a new version of the Karnataka Premier League now called the Maharaja Trophy. The press conference has a player draft very soon. I'm soon scheduled to go to the opening ceremony of the Chess Olympiad, which India is making a very big deal of, the 44th edition. That's next week. And, of course, we're also rejoicing about that fabulous 2-1 win in the ODIs in England. There's a lot of talk about whether Virat Kohli, which direction is he going in? And a lot of people are pouring in their advice, including Sunil Gavaskar. And let me just drop a name or two. I was at the club yesterday, the Bangalore club. Guess who I meet? KL Rahul. And I said, what are you doing here? Run to the West Indies quickly. And he said, yeah, well, I'm going very soon. But, yeah, plenty of cricket coming up.
Yeah, hopefully KL Rahul is well recovered. And on his way back to the team. Well, look, we're going to start this week on Stumped with the news that caught everybody by surprise, although maybe on reflection, not so surprised. England men's Test captain Ben Stokes announced his retirement from one-day internationals. It's come after England played 4 tests inside 5 weeks, and then just 2 days after the Test series finished, started a run of 12 white ball matches in 24 days. That schedule seemingly prompted Stokes to make this decision, although it's not as if it is a sudden problem. He says he can't give 100% in ODIs and that 3 formats are unsustainable right now. Jim, is this going to be a wake-up call to administrators in any way that there is too much cricket and this is the damage that can result?
Well, it's hard to imagine we're going to have a one-day World Cup and Champions Trophy and no other 50-over games played in the intervening years. But I do think it's all a bit much of a strain. And of course, in Stokes' case, he's 31. He's got a wounded knee and, he needs to be able to adjust his life so he can play his best cricket when he plays. And he can't do that every day of the week, and nor can a lot of other players. So I think it is putting the game on notice about one-day cricket. It'll have to defer more to the franchises and T20. That's obvious from the schedule that's just come out, the Future Tours program. But luckily, Test cricket seems to have retained its prominence, preeminence in all of this discussion. So, yes, I think unfortunately, and we're seeing a lot of that noise from people like Ashwin. I saw Wasim Akram the other day saying it's a bit of a spent force as a viable international game now. So, yes, I think we are seeing the kind of gradual demise of the importance of 50-over cricket in the schedule. And that is disappointing because, my goodness, we've had some wonderful World Cups, including the last one that Ben Stokes was the star in. So it won't fade immediately, but in time, it's just going to overrun like all cricket by T20 or maybe T10 by the time we finish doing this program in 2050 or whenever it is.
I mean, is it a spent force, Charu? Because does it still pull in TV audiences, TV money? And do you think that, this is symptomatic of what we've been saying on Stumped for a long time about the volume of cricket? And could more players ultimately follow the Stokes route?
Well, for starters, this is a bit dichotomous because on one hand, we keep saying that Test cricket must live on. And yet we don't seem to have the patience for a one-day match. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. How do we have patience for a 5-day match played largely during the day when there's nobody watching, in terms of big numbers? So if one-day internationals are in trouble, then Test cricket's in very deep trouble on that same score. Back to playing too much, I have to say, I don't want to sound too contrary a note, but the cricketers in general, compared to many, many other sports which are also athletic and robust, the word I'm looking for escapes me. But, the cricketers play the least in terms of physical sports. So they're playing a lot more perhaps than the past, but in the past it was just a pastime kind of sport. Now there's a lot more, but if you take any other major physical sport, I mean, say a tennis player out there will play 2, 3, 4 hours of a really tough match, virtually constant play, and come back the next day and play again, and the next and the next, and you make the final, you play on Sunday, on Monday you're back again. So there are many other sports where the top sports persons are playing 400 times more than cricketers in general. So what is this business about playing too much? I mean, are you playing a professional sport or do you want to have your cake and eat it too? In Stokes' case, maybe while he was talking about his mental strain and everything else, and maybe the last 2 years have been very tough on every sport, on cricket too, in terms of the quarantine and the isolation and everything else. And that may have had an excessive impact, apart from the fact that he's burying his one-day international heart at Wounded Knee. But so many other people may follow. It's just they have to get used to more cricket because it is their profession. And I don't think cricketers are playing anywhere near as much physically as many other top physical sports. So, it's really an individual decision.
I think to be very pleased that he is still playing in tests. And certainly in this country and in Australia and in India, tests are still highly, highly valued. The worry remains that, of course, that's not the case in all countries. And that I know we will continue to discuss on Stumped as well.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on ABC and All India Radio.
Now, T20 cricket is next week making its debut at the Commonwealth Games. The world's best women's cricketers have arrived here in the UK, in the city of Birmingham, where the Games will be held. And for most of the players, well, it's going to be a completely new experience. But for New Zealand star Suzie Bates, it's not going to be that unfamiliar. That's because 14 years ago, she represented New Zealand at the Olympics in basketball. Now, I caught up with Suzie this week and asked her whether she ever imagined that she'd be playing cricket at the Commonwealth Games.
To be honest, no. I think that was the beauty of playing different sports. When I grew up, it was having options. And when basketball had the opportunity to qualify for Beijing, it made my decision around committing to basketball for a couple of years an easy one, because I thought cricket would never get that opportunity and I didn't want to have any regrets. So to be sitting here now going to a Commonwealth Games with cricket, it's pretty surreal, thinking 14 years back I probably thought that was my last opportunity at one of those events once I committed to cricket.
But did you always know that you wanted to pursue a sporting career, albeit wholly amateur at that time?
No, I think that's what's very special about my career is I just played sport because I loved it, and I had two older brothers, and that's what we did on the weekend. And I just joined teams purely for the love of movement and wanting to be part of team sports. And it just has happened in my time, which I'm really fortunate that it became professional, it became a job, but it was never an intention and it never dictated any of my choices, which looking back, I sort of took for granted, whereas nowadays I feel like contracts and things actually can get in the way of young people making what is the right choice for them in terms of their sporting career and actually being able to work out without financial benefit what sport they truly love.
As far as the cricket and the basketball went then, so rugby was never going to be a thing, but was there a point, clearly you went to the Olympics as a basketballer. Again, was there, when was it impossible to keep playing both?
Yeah, well, so I was 19 when I went to the Olympics with basketball, and I remember leaving the games and basketball was my number one sport. I wanted to be the best basketballer I could be, and I had a taste of international basketball, and I'd signed with a professional team in New Zealand, which actually folded. So I'd signed up for that, and cricket was going to become sort of second best for a bit longer, but that team folded. So I joined the domestic cricket team with the Otago Sparks, and we had a World Cup in 2009. So I thought, well, with no basketball, I'll have a go at making that team. And then cricket just kept providing consistent opportunities, which basketball didn't in New Zealand. I would have had to go overseas. So that actually naturally just made me choose more cricket, because I could see when the next World Cup was, I could see when tours for the White Ferns were, whereas basketball with limited funding, I was unsure of what was next and where I had to go.
But it did give you an Olympic experience. Just how cherished is that, being part of, I suppose that bigger movement, as well as representing your country in cricket? You're sort of representing something bigger at an Olympics, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's what's so special about it, and what I'm so excited for not only the White Ferns but other female cricketers to experience, because you are a part of a massive global sporting event, and it's pretty special as an athlete to be part of it, no matter what sport you play. So yeah, to go to that Olympics, as a child growing up in New Zealand, I watched the Olympics on TV, and I dreamed of going to one, but didn't really know what that sport was going to be. And to have my whole family come as well, that was really cool.
And your career, Suzie, I mean, where would it rank if New Zealand could do well at this Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, personally, it would be a real highlight. I think off the back of the disappointing home World Cup in terms of performances, but the success that we had of promoting the game in our country is something I'll never forget. So we still have that support, and to have a global event to, I guess, make our fans proud again is something that we're really motivated to do. And obviously there's been a lot of change and a lot of stuff happened with New Zealand cricket recently. So if we could medal, it would definitely be a highlight, and that is the goal, to go out there and medal. So that's getting through to the semi-finals, which we haven't done in a pinnacle event in a while. And we have the talent like we've always had. It's just making sure that we give ourselves the best chance in those critical moments.
And you are one of the players that will benefit from the New Zealand initiative to give male and female professionals equal pay in terms of match fees. How is that going to change the dynamic and help the game in the country?
Obviously, it's massive news in New Zealand, and we are now one of the highest paid female athletes in the country through this change. But you're probably not going to see the benefits immediately. It is going to take sort of 5 years, I think, to see the benefits of that investment. But for me, it's about now we have really put our money where our mouths are, and young females like myself growing up, if they get to 18 and potentially are going to choose another sport like basketball, cricket now is a fully professional sport in our country. So I think we're going to attract some of the better athletes because there's a real clear pathway. I think we just have now young girls want to be a part of the White Ferns, and they can actually fully invest in their training, and that makes them better athletes and better cricketers.
Are you worried at all, Suzie, that countries that aren't necessarily as well funded as, say, England and Australia might struggle to retain national players in the face of more and more opportunities in the short form leagues? WBBL has been well established. There's now the 100. Whenever a women's IPL, will launch eventually, there will be more tournaments cropping up and more opportunities to be a franchise cricketer who might be better paid than being paid by your own home board.
I sort of don't worry about it, but I think it is a concern that will happen. If you look at, until we'd made that change, Sophie Devine, for example, could have earned a better living playing franchise cricket or playing domestically in Australia full time and giving up her national contract. And that's one of our best players to have. Probably if you look at the recent situation with South Africa, that's potentially happening, that if they're not able to earn that money in those competitions, they won't sign their contract, and then we lose the best players to the international games. So the more that boards can recognise that they need to value their players and value what they do for their country, the less players we're going to have retire early and play franchise cricket. And Look, I think franchise cricket is sort of where the global game is heading, and that's also like the fair break tournament that I was involved in. You're never going to have a Hong Kong player be paid what an English or Australian player gets paid, but they can be a full-time professional cricketer, and that makes the standard of all women's cricket better. So it's sort of catch-22, but I think those top 8 nations boards really need to ensure that they're valuing their players to keep them in the international game.
And to that degree, do you think that cricket in the Olympics, given that cricket's now in the Commonwealth Games for this year, could that be a precursor to cricket in the Olympics? And could that act as a further carrot and incentive, if you like, for players to think, yeah, by representing my country, I could have an opportunity at the Olympics or Commonwealth?
Yeah, well, the global audience that the Olympics has, that's got to grow sport. And yeah, I think as a hockey player, for example, in our country, if you wanted to go into an Olympics, hockey would be the sport you choose over cricket. So potentially it does attract those athletes. And when you start getting into the American market as well with Olympics, and having the Indians following the Olympics, I think would be massive for the IOC. So there's huge benefits. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting landscape in the next 4 or 5 years. Things have changed so quickly. Although I feel like I've been playing for a long time, it is unrecognizable. In the last 5 years, the women's game, there is things that I never thought would have happened in my career that have happened. So you just never really know what it's going to look like.
Well, Suzie, you're still a great, you're a legend. Enjoy the Commonwealth. I hope you and the rest of the team are able to embrace that whole experience, and look forward to seeing you in action then. Thanks for being with us on Stumped.
No worries, yeah, can't wait.
Well, that was New Zealand star Suzie Bates. Well, that's all we've got time for here on Stumped this week on All India Radio. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to BBC World Service's YouTube channel. My thanks to Charu, Sharma, Jim Maxwell, and all of you for listening. Speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.